I burned almost 2 hours playing around with AI too, trying to build an agent to track my team's progress. And then in the middle of it, I just had this epiphany. Wait, I could have just done that in Airtable, and it would have taken me half the time. That's my guess today on what happens when we reach for AI before we reach for judgment. Welcome back to Agentic AI Execution Podcast. I'm Leena, and today I am talking with Aadil, a TPM with 16 years of experience across Apple, Google, Nike, Humane. He also writes a newsletter on TPM leadership in the age of AI. Aadil has been thinking a lot about questions that I think everyone in this space is quietly wrestling with. Aadil, welcome to Agentic AI Execution Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. We're in such an interesting time now that things you say are invalidated the very next week because the technology and the way we're using the tools are changing and developing so fast that I think everybody's just trying to keep pace. So super excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. To begin with, you wrote about good judgment beats good prompt. Everyone here is optimizing on prompts these days, wiring up agents, changing tools, and you are saying the real differentiation is automable things. Make the case why good judgment and why not.
Yeah, so let me provide some more context. I've been in a lot of conversations lately, both, in my day job and outside. I'm very fortunate and blessed to have an opportunity to talk to folks like yourself, other TPMs in the community. And I think there is now this almost standard pattern that started popping up where as soon as we encounter a problem, our very first instinct is, can AI solve this for us? Whether that's, roadmap development, whether that is day-to-day activities we do as TPMs, managing our stakeholders, developing execution strategies around how do we achieve this grand North Star strategy that product has come up with. And I think what the case that I'm trying to make is that should not be our first instinct. And that's where good judgment comes from. The value that TPMs bring, the fundamental values and the core skills we bring starts with the fact that we are really great at solving problems. And those problems can be either people-centric, or they can be technology-centric, or they can be organizational-centric, or they can be system-centric. And one of the things that we get really good at is our ability to judge and evaluate a situation to then figure out, have I seen this pattern in the past before? And what did I do when that pattern appeared? I think when we continuously default to everything, can AI solve this? What we're sort of giving up is this agency of potentially something that can be solved without needing any AI tools. And this is a common pattern. I'll give you an example. We do a lot of planning, a lot of strategy discussions and things like that. And, many teams use many different kind of tools and whatnot. And oftentimes we always have this issue of product wants to do a lot. Engineering does not have the capacity to do a lot. So we're always trying to rationalize between these two things. And the instinct is maybe AI can help us solve this problem. Maybe it'll solve some problems. Maybe you'll find that you're still able to achieve high velocity because now you're offhanding code generation and code development to AI agents. But the challenge still remains is when you're developing these strategies, if a particular process or tool is not working the way it needs to work, your instinct should not be, let's just throw or bolt AI on top of it. Because what you're now doing is building a house of cards, which is a system on top of weak systems. When the conversation you should be having is a very human one of wait, why do we keep finding ourselves in a situation where we want to do more, but we don't have enough time to, and then we go into this vicious cycle of constant planning, constant evaluation, and why do we think that AI can help with us? So this is what I mean, where we as TPMs should be sitting in these rooms and applying judgment and asking wait, yes, AI can do it, but do we really need AI to do it? Maybe we need to take a look at our processes and systems, and maybe we should simplify them rather than attaching this new system on top of it.
And how do you see a TPM catching those judgment calls early?
Yeah, I think part of this is that you have to understand the opportunity cost, right? Nothing is it better to spend 20 minutes building something in Claude Code or, Codex, which then you have to maintain for many, many hours in the future, versus maybe taking an hour or two and having an honest conversation with your cross-functional partners and saying that, hey, do we need to change something here? Right. Uh, and I think part of this is that a lot of senior TPMs, particularly staff level ones, will be really great at catching these sort of dilemmas early on because they've been in this space for such a long time that they've seen these patterns before. I think for junior TPMs who are just starting out, it's worth doing a hypothetical exercise, right? And it's having that exploratory conversation. And if the conclusion still comes back that no, the AI tool is better to solve this, then be my guest. Use that AI tool, but don't look at it from the perspective of like, oh no, I'm just going to do this in 15 minutes. It's like, no, in the future, when this tool gets better or this agent gets better, you're going to have to maintain this agent. That agent's going to break down because it's going to encounter new patterns that it's not encountered before. Yes, it's a reinforcement learning, self-learning tool, but at the end of the day, you as the human orienting this agent, you'll have to keep maintaining it. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is that you can get lost in this stuff. Like you keep hitting next, like what can the model give me next? What can the model give me next?
And I think you wrote about this as well. Like a sharper question to ask is, should AI really be doing this? Tell our listeners more about it. How can we evolve our thinking around what to delegate versus what we should keep our control on with AI as a team?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is, I think the standard thinking within the TPM community is like, obviously, throw all your administrative tasks at it so that what you're left with is the human problem solving. But to be very frank, I think, that's a bit of like half the picture. The way I think about it is that everything has to be grounded in a specific outcome or impact, right? Ultimately, what we as TPMs, the biggest impact we want to have is ship projects and programs on time within the resource allocation that we've been given, matching the specifications and requirements that product or somebody has established of what the right or good outcome looks like. Right? That is fundamentally what we're doing. Everything else we do, status report writing, weekly syncs, stand-ups, Jira boards, backlogs, that's all in the effort and endeavor of achieving that final outcome. And part of the way I think about these things is that there are certain signals that I get from each one of these activities that I don't want to lose track of or don't want to offload to a particular machine or an agent or whatever you want to call it. And you may call me like, that's such backwards thinking, like you need to think like a modern TPM. I'm like, that's fine. I think we're all going to have very different styles of approach to how we leverage these AI tools. For me, AI tools is not replacing functions of my job, or it's not automating functions of my jobs purely on the basis of like, is this an administrator's task? Am I being annoyed by doing this? Some people might do it. But for me, it's like what allows me to have clear mental space to focus on the right things. I'll give you an example of what I think is something that I have done that has been very helpful for me. One of the things that, I have my engineering teams do is like we do, weekly planning syncs. And in those planning syncs, I'll have all of the core component teams write stand-up notes ahead of the meeting so that when we're in the meeting, nobody is writing things. Everybody is focused on paying attention, right? Sure, you can be like, oh, why don't you just use a meeting transcriber and things like that. But for me, the act of writing things down allows us to have conversations or questions ahead of time. And then the way I leverage AI tools is like, I'll take those stand-up notes and I have developed a template within Claude where it will spit out the exec summary that I then provide to the executives on a weekly basis. That's one type of administrative task that I feel I need to automate. But am I having an AI agent run a stand-up or send automated Slack messages for me or any of that stuff? No, I don't think I've crossed that bridge yet or have gotten to that point. I'd still like to own some of those conversations and messaging because it changes based on my judgment of what is most important right now. I could spend 30 minutes to 50 minutes to an hour training an AI agent to do all that stuff for me to save me what, maybe 5 minutes? Or I could just do it, right? So I think that's the kind of like approach that I have of what truly frees up my time to focus on the things that will have proper impact. I hope that makes sense.
It
I
does.
think a lot of people will balk at this answer and they'll be like, oh, this is not modern AI thinking.
Instead of blankly delegating everything to AI, step back, try to have a natural conversation, build that human connection, because that's where you'll get that judgment call where folks are struggling and what are the things which are not being captured. And you can get that automated later, anyways.
I think the part of the dilemma is that we want to use these tools more and more. Like the things that we've been able to achieve with these tools is fantastic. But in that crazy pursuit of AIing everything, we've kind of lost our sense of, should I even have AI do this or not, right? What am I achieving or gaining besides, bragging, right? Like at some point, you're the sixth TPM to show me that I have built a morning debriefing agent for me. Like that's valuable for you as an individual. It gets very hard when you're trying to build AI tools for a broader organization or function. Because the challenge for us is, as compared to product managers or engineers, in all honesty, like I'm being very brutal. This is what 16 years of working in the TPM space across like many different companies from Apple, Google, Nike, even a tech startup. Honest output. TPMs have zero output of our own. If you tell me, no, a schedule is our output, it is not. A schedule is the summarization or culmination of everyone else's inputs. Think about product, think about design, think about engineering. So we are the synthesizing machine of all functions within a product development organization. And what we create are stories and narratives, which we then share with our executives to give them confidence in the fact that whatever strategies that they have now put in motion are on track, completely falling off the rails, and requires intervention, or launched in the wild, in the production, and now it's time to figure out how to iterate.
Wonderful. How do you see this getting differentiated between, say, a leader of TPM who is trying to get back on the feet with new hiring processes? What are the things they should do and go learn to make them more sellable with AI TPM space as it is evolving?
A couple of years ago, before AI tools showed up, one of the ways that a TPM could differentiate themselves was, you went and took these very hard technical certifications, whether that was like the AWS cloud practitioner, you went back to school or online programs to learn how to do programming or introduce yourself to more deeper concepts like machine learning and transforming. But for the first time ever, the learning or the entry barriers to learning a super powerful tool is equalized, right? You're not learning a specific language. You're using Codex, I'm using Codex. If somebody else is using Cursor, somebody else is using Lovable, somebody else is using like this new thing that just came out today, Grokbot. At the end of the day, everything does the same thing. They're code generation agent tools that help you build things, right? So for the first time ever, we're all playing with somewhat the same tools. So, and the amount of time and energy and skill we need to put into learning these tools is almost the same. The barriers of entry are so low. So now comes the question of, how do you stand out as a TPM? Again, I'm going to be brutally honest, and this is something that I've written about in my newsletter as well. If your function as a TPM is to just manage Jira backlogs, create schedules, and manage or load balance tickets in whatever issue management tool that you're working in, and run meetings, you're not going to have a very long career in the coming years. And the reason why is because it's not just the nature of our job is changing, the nature of the entire industry is changing. PMs have stopped writing PRDs to a certain degree. Engineers are no longer just, writing code by hand. It's all code generation. So how do you estimate something that is completely based on now compute power rather than t-shirt sizes? How long is it going to take you to do like what used to take a week now can take 30 minutes to like 15 minutes, right? So now the bottleneck has become decision making. So I keep asking myself this question of, if this is what the future looks like, Do we need schedules anymore? Do we need to estimate things anymore? What's left for me to do? Like, do we need Jira tickets anymore? Why am I writing? If nobody's writing PRDs, there's no requirements. What I'm getting is prototypes and demos, right? What do we do? And I think this is where generalist TPMs who have amassed a career where they have seen how different companies work and operate, I think are very well positioned to leverage these AI tools to create more leverage for their careers in the long term. Obviously, if you're an AI TPM working in the AI space already, I think you are the most well positioned. The other thing I'll say is that the fundamentals of TPMs will not go away. I've noticed resumes that are coming to me for review where literally like 60% of it is just AI, right? If I am a hiring manager, that's great, but I'm still trying to understand, can you work with complex programs? Can you work with complex personalities? What is the scale and size of programs that you have shipped? Right? I think we're all caught up in this like AI hype wheel. I understand what these tools and, models are capable of. But at the same time, I'm also the person who's like not gonna like AGI pill myself and be like, oh, I've got like OpenClaw running my entire family's calendar and all that stuff. Like that's great for you. That works for you. That's awesome. So don't discount the fact that the core TPM skills will matter no matter what. That is what we will continue to judge people on. Leveraging AI tools to then exponentially increase the impact those core skills are going to have is going to be important. So I think, what does this mean for somebody who's out of a job, who's struggling to land that next role? You start to have to look at your resume and see, what story are you telling? Are you trying to convince somebody that I am a great user of AI tools? Like, look at my GitHub with like 50 prompts and 500 agents that I have built? Or is your resume still telling the story that you are an extraordinary, excellent generalist TPM who has shipped many varieties of programs and projects? And I think at this point, it's also table stakes now that if you don't know what these tools can do, I think you're at a disadvantage. So you can see the paradoxical nature of my answer. It's like at one place I'm saying like, don't worry about like, the AI tools, but at the same time, it's like, learn the AI tools. We're all trying to figure this out. But I think what matters is that your resume still needs to show that you're an extraordinary TPM and you deserve this TPM role, while at the same time, don't just have your resume be a vomit of AI everywhere. That's not going to give me a very strong signal because literally everybody else is doing the same thing.
What great means to you when you look for hiring the next person?
This has developed a little bit over time. I think the 3 years I spent at Humane completely changed me as a TPM. My entire career, I always plugged into a system or a framework or process, a way of doing something. Humane was the first time where I was forced to create the very systems that I used to plug into. So build how we build products, how we ship products, how we decide what to build from scratch. And it's very true when you're part of a TPM organization at a high growth startup, what matters most is outcome and what is the fastest way to get there. I think for me, a great TPM is somebody who recognizes when it's important to be by the book kind of a TPM, and when is it important to throw that book out the window and improvise the heck out of whatever you're doing. Find shortcuts safely, find the most expedient way to get to the outcome that you're trying to get to. And the way I look for that signal is I ask you, what's the most complex program that you've ever worked on? Tell me about a time when you struggled with something in that program and what was the learning you took away from it, right? If all I hear is, yeah, I ran a stand-up and I, wrote reports and I did this, is like the typical answer you would expect from a TPM. That's not a really strong signal. But if in the lesson learned, they tell me something qualitative or something that is very subjective in their nature, like, I now do this one thing that's not in some Scrum guidebook or not in some like agile playbook, that gives me a strong signal that you're somebody, if I put into a complex environment or ambiguous environment, you will improvise your way out of that situation. For me, that's what a great TPM means. Yeah, and somebody would argue with me that, but I work in a big organization where all of these bureaucratic steps are necessary. My response to that is pressure test when something is really needed. Because I think one of the things that I've noticed is that within these big companies, we get so indoctrinated to doing things in a particular way, we stop asking, why are we doing this in the first place? Right? What is the purpose of this procedural step that we're doing? Why does this thing need to be a 6-pager versus just a 1-pager? Then slowly asking yourself, why is this 1-pager even there? Could we do it without it? Right? I think this is where the improvisation and curiosity element comes into play, where you can take some of that startup thinking and bring that into a big tech environment and look for places where you push back at the system. And the reason why you're pushing back at the system is not because you hate the system or you want to break it down. It's to prevent bloat and unnecessary steps that we've stopped asking why they're there. And you'll notice that there's a lot of things we do just because it's muscle memory. And this is where you continue to develop that brain, that TPM muscle, so that what the engineering teams see you as somebody they can partner with and they can rely on to not just ask, like, okay, so what's the next step? What's the next state? But be a true partner. And product sees you as somebody who can make engineering move faster.
What are the things a TPM should be doing to grow as an AI TPM or develop muscle memory to build stable system orchestrator?
Yeah, look, one of the first things I would say is if you have an opportunity to get yourself into a position where you're on an AI project or a program or a team that's working on AI components, I think that's the first step that you do. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing different that those teams are doing from a TPM perspective. They're still shipping features and functionality. Those features and functionality still need a predictable way to figure out, are we on track or not? And people still need to know when those things will ship. So that's the first thing that you can do. The second thing that you can do is, if you're not in that position, if you have access to AI tools, start asking yourself the question of, what can I reasonably automate or pass on to my AI agents to free up more of my mental space to focus on the elements that matter the most? The other thing that you can do is just have a healthy sense of curiosity. Keep experimenting with these tools. Keep experimenting with new concepts that are coming up, right? We've gone from prompt engineering to context engineering to now loop engineering, right? So within a span of, I think, 2 years, the very notion of what it means to be engineering on these tools is changing, right? So you have to figure out how to stay on top of these changes as they come. But I will say this, the world is changing super fast. I personally think we will need less and less TPMs in the future. Our organizations will run more leaner. And it's not because AI tools are making us do things faster. It's AI tools helping us realize that a lot of things that especially big tech companies do is bloat. It's rapid expansion because some leader somewhere had empire building, ambitions and just kept hiring and hiring, not because he needed to fill particular gaps, just because he wanted to have or bigger headcount. So when you're exploring new roles and you're lucky enough to land those, do ask your potential prospective employers how they think about scaling. I think if you are a TPM where you find yourself in a couple of months just working on one project at a time, I think that's a bad deal, bad place to be in. Yeah. It's a weird, terrifying, exciting time.
We are building the plane as the field is changing itself. How do you see TPMs operating on a daily basis with this new era?
The most common expectation is velocity comes from just working faster, throwing more resources, being more agile, and things like that. But I think the nature of velocity is that it's a combination of decisions and choices that you make, understanding the nature of the problem that you're dealing with your product development team, being more outcome driven versus bureaucratic. And I think at the end of the day, as TPMs, what we create is this system of predictability and repeatability, right? One of the things that I always do when I join a new company and start working on programs is I try to find the common patterns, right? Every program that you work on eventually settles into common patterns of milestones that every new feature needs to go through. So you start documenting those features, those milestones. And then every successive feature that you build, you now know what your template looks like for your Gantt chart or for your work breakdown or your critical path. Then it's easier for us to ask that question of, do we really need to do that step? Do we really need this milestone? We've done this before on this thing. can that carry over here, right? What you're trying to prevent as you move from 0 to 1 to 1 to n, you want to prevent as many cold start problems as you possibly can, or cold start processes, or cold start inputs. TPMs can play a huge role in increasing or maintaining velocity for product development teams. And it comes from judgment, asking better questions. Do we even have a grand strategy around why we're doing something? What's the reason we're doing this? What are we trying to do? So that grounds the product development teams in very clear goals, so that when we get to a fork in the road or a complicated problem, the trade-off discussion is very grounded in data and metrics rather than up in the air type of thing.
What are tools you use to learn those things and keep evolving?
We TPMs often do a lot of things that on a day-to-day basis somebody might not be concerned about or be paying attention to. But at some moment, someone will come and be like, hey, Aadil, where's this XYZ thing that I'm looking at? Or where's this particular data point that I'm curious about? And that thing that you've been maintaining for the past several weeks that nobody else does now finally becomes handy. So in my mind, I think the real strength is pure discipline to continue to do the things even when nobody is looking. And the reason why is because you're continuing to maintain that muscle, whether that is organization of information in a particular way, whether it's a pattern or repeatable, step you do before a stand-up happens. And when you're disciplined, you match that with an intense amount of curiosity and retrospection. I think a lot of TPMs are not taking the time to self-analyze and ask themselves a question of, okay, could that interaction have gone better? Could that approach be done differently? Majority of us wait for this feedback to come to us in the form of a manager telling like, hey, I got this feedback from this engineering manager that you did it this way, you should have done it this way, right? Rather than being passive about this feedback, I'm constantly asking myself, every interaction I'm having, every question that I'm asking, every message that I'm sending, I'm asking myself, could this have been done better? And this was something I picked up from really great mentors at Apple. There was this constant reinforced learning that those amazing TPM leaders were doing that I would watch. And it was so wonderful to see. And I've kept that throughout my career and even in my personal life of always asking, there has to be a better way of doing this.
Keeping that curious mindset and thinking, how can I evolve in a daily basis? Which agent for which job? Where's the place you have been burned enough that you won't let it run unsupervised?
Ooh, I've not yet hit a place where I've trusted agents enough to do things for me unsupervised. But I'll tell you this, I had an experience where I was trying to build an AI agent where it would allow me to give a snapshot of all the projects that my teams were working on in a given quarter and create statuses for them in a way where I could add extra details like, priority, status, a whole bunch of extra data points. I burnt almost 2 hours playing around with this AI tool. And then in the middle of this, I just had this epiphany where I was like, wait, could have just done this in Airtable and it would have taken me half the time to do that. Right? So I think this is where the judgment comes in, is that we're so caught up in a situation where there's constant pressure on us to leverage these AI tools. I've seen some amazing examples of what TPM's been able to build with these modern AI tools. But I think the challenge for me is it cannot be the first thing we grab every time we encounter a problem. And part of this is because what I worry about is this judgment debt that we will create where we will have TPMs who are potentially in situations where when we put them in there, they're going to reach for something that is not there. And part of that judgment is also I've caught my AI agents spit out complete nonsense, right? And I've had to go in and rewrite most of it. And this is where I use it not as a replacement for myself, but as a means to increase my impact that I already have as a great TPM, right? People can disagree with me on this. If your function as a TPM is just air traffic control or moving Jira tickets around and not being actively participant in technical conversations, systems conversations, product conversations, organizational conversations, your role is not long, because the tools we use today are perhaps the dumbest tools that we will have ever in our lives, because this thing is just going to keep getting better and better. And we're going to figure out better and better ways of doing these things. And there's no tool differentiation, right? We're all talking to these things. We're all chatting with these things. They're all based on the same sort of fundamental concepts. So there is no like, I know Codex. Okay, I know Cloud Code. I know Cursor. It's like, no, it's all the same thing, right? So yeah. And I don't think TPMs will ever be in a situation where we're submitting code or leveraging these AI agents to create code, unless you're running your own business. Like that's a different story. Or you're a solopreneur.
I'm curious, any final thoughts?
Two things. Don't stop learning and don't stop asking questions. And the reason why I say this is like, and you'll see like, I avoided like, go learn this certification, go do this. I think TPMs who never stop learning are the ones who are able to evolve faster than those who get set in a particular way of doing things, right? I worked with very smart senior people who I saw crash and burn within 3 months because they could not mentally switch their way of doing things to the way things were done at the company that I was at. And the second thing is don't stop asking questions. And the reason why is because it develops that retrospective mindset. It develops that curiosity mindset. It develops that, re-education mindset that you need as a TPM to survive, right? Because our value is more than just Jira boards and Gantt charts and things like that. We can be a pressure testing system for engineering. Have we thought about this? Have you thought about this? We saw this on that project. Did you think about this particular system? What about the impact of making this decision here? And none of this comes if you're not constantly evaluating and thinking about the right questions to ask. So never stop learning, never stop asking questions. And I think, and I pray wherever we're going, I've been lucky that I've been working in AI companies and products for the past almost 5 years now, since 2021. I've learned things along the way. For those who are not as lucky as I am, my only advice is stay patient, don't discount fundamental TPM skills, and just learn these tools, not from the perspective of, showcasing just how many agents you can build, but further strengthening that you are a great TPM. And I think the future belongs to generalists who have seen as many programs and as many patterns and as many problems, so they know where to put these AI tools.
Thank you, Aadil. That was such a great conversation. I learned so many things. I feel my toolkit is now filled with more things I want to use. Thank you for this.
Thank you for having me. And I wish everybody out there the best of luck. And yeah, just stay healthy, stay curious, and yeah, just try to enjoy as much as what we have.
Thank you. Aadil, this was such a great conversation. I feel like my toolkit as a TPM just got a lot fuller. If there is one thing I want listeners to sit with, it is what you said. The first question shouldn't be, can AI solve this? It should be, do we even need to solve this the way we have been solving? And that Airtable story is going to stick with me for a while. Sometimes the fix isn't a smarter agent. It's just the simple tool you already have. The other thing that stood out to me, TPMs are synthesizers, not producers. Our value isn't the schedule of Jira board. It's the judgment behind it. And that's exactly the thing AI cannot replace. If you want more from Aadil, check out his newsletter. He writes regularly about TPM leadership and how is it evolving with AI. Links in the show notes. Aadil, thank you so much for taking time to join this conversation. Until next time, stay curious, keep building, and bring someone along for the ride.